All right, let's just dive right into this. Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to unpack one of the most fascinating and, honestly, chilling places on Earth. Tucked away deep inside the Aravalli Hills of Rajasthan, India, sits a place that has completely captured the imaginations of millions of people. I'm talking about Bhangarh Fort. It is widely considered to be the most haunted place in India and maybe even all of Asia. So what we're going to do today is look at the dark mystery surrounding these ancient ruins, totally deconstruct the legends, and uncover the really shocking reality that's hiding in the shadows of its history. Now, you know what's really crazy about this? It's not just some local rumor or a creepy sign put up by a tourist trap. No, this is an official, real-world warning board placed right at the main gate by the Archaeological Survey of India. That's a government body, and it states in absolutely clear terms that entering the borders of Bhangarh Fort before sunrise and after sunset is strictly prohibited. It instantly gives you this feeling that there is a very tangible, terrifying danger lurking in the dark just beyond those gates. And, well, there are plenty of chilling local legends that back up that warning. Take this one famous story, for example. It's about three friends who decided the whole thing was just a myth. They ignored the government warning, dodged the security guards, and snuck into the fort in the pitch-black night with just a tiny flashlight. In the darkness, one of the guys actually slipped and fell deep into an old dry well. His friends managed to pull him out. He was severely injured, and they rushed him to their car. But before they could even reach the hospital, they got into a fatal car crash, killing all three of them instantly. The locals, they don't call it a coincidence. They say the fort's curse was just collecting its debt for breaking the rules. To really understand why people are so terrified of this place, you have to look at the ruins themselves. Because there is an incredibly eerie physical anomaly. Built way back in 1573, Bhangarh wasn't just a fort. It was a massive, bustling city. We're talking over 9,000 homes, grand palaces, temples, a huge marketplace. But if you walk through it today, you're going to notice something bizarre. There are zero intact roofs. The walls are standing perfectly fine, but the roofs, entirely gone. And the local claim is that whenever someone actually tries to build a roof over these ruins, it mysteriously collapses right away, making sure the city stays this desolate, open wasteland forever. So how did that happen? Well, local folklore points to two foundational myths, basically two legendary curses. The first one involves a meditating monk named Baba Balunath. He supposedly allowed the city to be built on one very specific condition. The shadows of the fort's towers could never, ever touch his home. And for years, they kept the pact. But eventually, a later king built the palace 7 stories high. The shadow fell on the monk's home, the pact was broken, and bam, the city was cursed to ruin. The second myth is definitely more terrifying. It's about a dark sorcerer named Tantric Singya who fell obsessively in love with the beautiful princess Ratnavati. It was unrequited, of course, so he tried to trick her by enchanting her perfume with dark magic to act as a love potion, but the princess caught on. She threw the bottle onto a massive boulder, and the dark magic rebounded, causing the boulder to literally roll over and crush the sorcerer to death. But right before he died, he cursed the entire city to utter destruction, condemning everyone to wander the ruins as ghosts, never to be reborn. And the thing is, those stories bleed right into the modern day. If you go online, the internet is absolutely flooded with terrifying modern encounters from tourists. People swear they hear women crying in the dark, the sound of phantom glass bangles breaking, or even the scent of unexplainable perfume floating through the ruins. Heck, even Bollywood hasn't escaped it. When they were shooting the film Karan Arjun there, an actress reportedly started dancing as if she was totally possessed. And there's this wild story about a journalist named Pallavi. Her scooter mysteriously stalled right outside the fort, and this complete stranger walked up, started the engine without even touching it, and whispered to her, "They want you." The sheer volume of these experiences is just staggering. So, with all of these terrifying claims, we really have to ask, are the tragic Princess Ratnavati and his dark sorcerer actually wandering these ancient ruins? Are the ghosts of Bhangarh real? And is that the actual reason the government keeps people out at night? Okay, prepare to have the rug totally pulled out from under you. Because history, it tells a completely different story. When historians actually go looking for this cursed princess or the dark sorcerer seeking revenge, they find absolutely zero historical records of their existence. None. There's no contemporary document, no stone inscription, no record anywhere that Princess Ratnavati, Tantric Singya, or even the monk Baba Balunath ever existed. These foundational characters are pure folklore. They're just stories passed down from generation to generation, getting a little more dramatic and a little more terrifying every single time someone tells them. But wait, hold on. If the ghosts aren't real, why do so many completely normal people genuinely feel terror when they visit? This is where the science gets super fascinating. Let me introduce you to something called infrasound. These are low-frequency sound waves, specifically below 20 hertz. They are completely inaudible. Your ears can't hear them at all, but they carry so much energy that your body physically feels them. When you're exposed to infrasound, it triggers this sudden, unexplainable anxiety, dizziness, and just a profound, heavy sense of dread. To put that into perspective, let me tell you about a British engineer named Vic Tandy back in 1980. He was working late by himself in his laboratory when he suddenly broke out in cold sweats. He felt this intense, creepy feeling of being watched, and he even saw a gray shadow figure out of the corner of his eye. He was convinced he had seen a ghost. But the very next day, he realized a newly installed extractor fan in the lab was emitting a silent sound wave at exactly 19 hertz. That vibration was literally resonating with the fluid in his eyeballs, causing those visual shadow hallucinations and the physical panic. He turned the fan off, the infrasound stopped, and the ghost completely vanished. Now let's take that exact science and apply it to Bhangarh Fort. This place is essentially a massive, natural infrasound generator. You've got wind constantly howling through these centuries-old, roofless stone tunnels. On top of that, Bhangarh is located in Seismic Zone 4, which is a high-risk earthquake zone in the Aravalli Hills. The constant minor earth movements and shifting rocks naturally generate these low, rumbling infrasound frequencies. So when tourists are walking through the fort, their bodies are literally being bombarded by physical waves of dread that they can't hear, which makes their brains think a supernatural presence is watching them. And if you're thinking, well, that wouldn't happen to me, let's look at the Goldsmiths University Haunted Project from 2008. Researchers took 79 participants and put them inside a totally normal, empty white room. But they secretly pumped the room full of electromagnetic fields and infrasound. Over 20% of the people felt a presence, and 8% felt sheer terror, all from invisible waves. But here is the real kicker. Even when the researchers turned the devices off, highly suggestible people still felt terrified simply because they had been told they were participating in a haunted project. Human suggestibility, combined with those physical triggers, can literally manufacture pure dread out of thin air. Then you add in this psychological trick our own minds play on us. It's an evolutionary phenomenon called pareidolia. It's basically when the human brain detects familiar faces or figures in random, ambiguous shapes. Think of how back in 1976, everyone thought they saw a literal face on Mars in a satellite photo, but it was really just shadows and craters. When you go to Bhangarh Algar expecting it to be haunted, your brain is already primed. You look into a dark corner or at a weird crumbling pillar, and your brain's evolutionary wiring instantly forces you to see a face or a human figure where there is literally only shadow and stone. Right, but what about the sounds, the crying women, the feeling of being hunted? Let's systematically map those reported paranormal activities right against the natural reality of the area. You hear women crying in the distance? Those are wild hyenas. Rustling in the trees? Macaque monkeys. You feel a primal, gut-wrenching sense of being hunted? Well, you might actually be. Bhangarh is only 50 kilometers from the massive 866 square kilometers Surbiska Tiger Reserve. Bengal tigers and leopards frequently wander right into those ruins after dark. So, let's bring this whole narrative full circle and re-examine that terrifying warning board from the Archaeological Survey of India. If you read the fine print, it also says, cattle bringing is prohibited. Why? Because tigers eat cattle. The ASI officials and the local archaeologists themselves have publicly stated time and time again that the fort is not haunted. That ominous warning board is simply a very practical, boring administrative notice. It's there to protect tourists from having ancient stone walls collapse on their heads in the dark and to keep them from becoming a midnight snack for a roaming leopard. That's it. Which kind of brings us to a much more sobering reality. If there were no dark sorcerers, no magic love potions, and absolutely no curses, how did a thriving, beautiful city of 9,000 homes actually become a desolate wasteland? Let's transition away from the myths for a second and uncover the real, forgotten, and incredibly tragic history of Bhangarh. Here is the true historical timeline. The city was built in 1573 by Madho Singh. Over the generations, political power shifted around, and by 1720, it was captured by the forces of Sawai Jai Singh of Jaipur, which basically reduced it to just a secondary town. But the final fatal blow? It wasn't a war, and it sure wasn't a spell. In 1783, a massive, catastrophic El Niño weather event triggered the Chalisa famine across North India. It was a drought so horrific that in some neighboring regions, half to two-thirds of the entire population perished. Without water, it became entirely impossible to live in Bhangarh. The residents didn't vanish by magic. They were forced to abandon their beautiful homes and literally flee for their lives just to find drinking water. The city simply died of thirst. And that really leaves us looking deeply at our own psychology, doesn't it? Why do we so desperately prefer a satisfying ghost story over the bleak reality of history? Well, a dramatic villain casting a dark curse gives us a clear cause. It gives us an enemy, a narrative that makes sense. It's a story we can wrap our heads around. On the other hand, a devastating, uncontrollable natural disaster like a famine is chaotic. It's bleak, and it is terrifying because it reminds us exactly how powerless we are against nature. Humanity creates these intricate ghost stories because, ironically enough, fearing a ghost feels safer and way more controllable than facing the random, devastating forces of the real world. I want to wrap up our explainer today with a really brilliant thought from the legendary scientist Marie Curie. She said, "Nothing in life is to be feared, it is only to be understood. Now is the time to understand more so that we may fear less." Bhangarh Fort isn't a realm of evil spirits. It's a monument to history, acoustics, human psychology, and survival. So the next time you hear a terrifying tale, look a little closer. What other famous hauntings out there in our world are just waiting for a scientific explanation? Thanks so much for exploring this mystery with me, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.